reconvene and welcome all present to this public hearing of this Joint Select Committee on National Security. Might I indicate that this is what we call a single evidence session, and we do this with an understanding or an approach where we will focus on the strategic objectives, the targets, the challenges, the successes, and the new initiatives, among other closely related, relevant, and maybe peripheral issues to all of these. Might I begin, of course, by causing members of this committee to introduce ourselves for the formality and, of course, for the record. Let me start on my right.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, Deputy Commissioners, Gerald Ramdeen, member.
Rudal Munilal, member.
Good afternoon, Paul Richards, Vice Chair.
Good afternoon, Nigel Freitas, member.
And I am, of course, Fitzgerald Hines, Chairman of this committee. We are to ask you, Commissioner, for the record, and in keeping with the usual formalities, to introduce yourself and your colleagues.
Gary Griffith, Commissioner of Police. On my right, Mr. Harold Phillip, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Acting Crime and Support. And on my left, Mr. Dira Dulal Chan, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Acting Operations.
Thank you all very much, and you are most welcome to be with us this afternoon. When we communicate, just as a matter of housekeeping, make sure that you get the microphone on for a proper record. And we are supported, this committee, by a very able team, our secretariat, led by, of course, the standing clerk of the House, Madam Jackie Sampson Miguel, and the clerk of the Senate, Mr. Caesar, and, of course, a number of other persons who are here with us. Might I indicate that this hearing will be broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Let me remind all present, particularly the members of this committee, that, and of course you who are here with us, that any questions and concerns would be directed through the chair, and this is simply to keep an order and to ensure no one is speaking while another might be, so I'll recognize you as soon as you are ready to comment. Let me as well remind all persons present to deactivate your phones, at the very minimum, put them on silent so that they will not disturb these proceedings. And I would like, therefore, by way of getting started, to indicate, Commissioner, that this Joint Select Committee is empowered to call persons and to call for papers regarding all matters touching and concerning national security policy and the way it is implemented in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This committee is mindful of the fact that you have recently been appointed to the position of Commissioner of Police, and this committee is mindful of the fact that the Trinidad and Tobago public, not only do they expect, but they deserve to be secure, to feel secure in Trinidad and Tobago to the extent that that is possible and within, of course, the mandate of the police service. And we are also mindful of the fact that your coming, no one can dispute that, has generated widespread national conversation and the impact of your activity so far has generated even more discussions in the national community. And this committee decided that it would be opportune to bring you before us at this time with the objectives as I've outlined them, so it would give us an opportunity on behalf of the people we represent, and not the least on behalf of the larger parliament, to find out from you the things that we propose to today, and as well to give you an opportunity to explain the policies, to explain the positions as you have assumed them, and to tell us what they are along other things. We would like to give you an opportunity to make a brief opening statement, if it pleases you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. As the Commissioner of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, every single day there's going to be a demand for the citizens of this country to be provided with their most fundamental right, of that of safety and security. Chairman, I can actually speak in a broad sense of what we intend to do in the very near future. I know, however, the citizens, they want to know what is happening today, how it is that they intend to ensure their safety and security. We do have pillars of change and growth, from dealing with crime reduction, crime prevention, but also taking away the perception and fear of crime. I can actually speak, Chairman, of the statistics, but statistics will not take away perception and fear of crime. So that is also something that is very critical we are dealing with. Also dealing with safety in public places and road safety, and also, Chairman and to other members, dealing with the modernization of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We have to look at the modernization, the transformation of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. There are a number of things that we are doing at this time to transform the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. When it is you look at the numbers that we have, what we intend to do is to ensure through that previous manpower audit, we are looking at that audit to try to ensure that we can utilize all of our resources in the most effective and efficient manner. There are many units that were established over 5 decades ago, and they may not be as necessary as then. Likewise, there are new units that you would be seeing in the very near future, dealing with counterterrorism, domestic violence, cold cases, missing persons, the improvement of intelligence gathering operations, and all of these things will ensure the bigger picture, to ensure that we have a proper framework. It cannot just be picking low-hanging fruit for us to ensure that we can reduce crime on a daily basis. We have to look at what is going to happen in the very near future. The catalyst of the major crime that takes place in this country, we're all aware, it has to do with gang activity. And Chairman, as much as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we continue to drive forward in an aggressive manner to provide systems for deterrence, intelligence, rapid response, deterrence, high visibility. We also have to look at the social aspects to prevent crime, because there are about 5,000 to 10,000 gang members that they have become the catalyst for. Just looking at last year, the 517 homicides, over 75% can be related to gang activity, from actual gang warfare to reprisal to other aspects with gang activity. But as much as the police service can deal with that, what is going to happen in the next few years, where you have persons between the ages of 10 to 14 that want to imitate their big brothers, their fathers, their friends, we might very well have 100,000 gang members. So the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are fully aware it is not just the aggressive and hard policing approach, but to deal with the social avenues to take young persons away from a life of crime. And there are a number of things that you would be seeing this year, Mr. Chairman, and that we will be able to I will be able to explain in the, if required, as well as the things that we have done. In a nutshell, there would be yardsticks that we intend to do. In the first 8 months in 2018, there was indeed a 16% increase in homicides, and homicides being probably on most occasions the barometer that people see in dealing with crime, how it is the police service can actually, if they control crime. The last 4 months, from August the 17th to December 31st, there was a 13% reduction in homicides. As it is at this year, in the month of January, there's a 33% reduction in homicides in this month of January in comparison to last year's figure for January. That is not to say that we are succeeding. I would say that we are probably angled in the right direction. We have a very long way to go. I am actually looking at a 20% reduction in homicides this year in comparison to last year. As it is at this year, as we are coming to the close of the first month, we're just about a 33% reduction. However, as I stated, dealing with homicides and dealing with crime, it is fluid. We never know what can take place. There have been, I think we were just trying to confirm over $500 million in seizure of illegal drugs over the last few months. And by doing that, it means certain persons are being hurt, and it is going to affect them. How does it affect them? Is it going to reach to the point where they will continue to peg back and affect other individuals? Our job is to ensure the safety and security of each and every citizen in this country, and that we intend to do. There will be a number of different things that I can elaborate on, Mr. Chairman, but in a nutshell, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we intend to do all that is required to provide citizens with that right of safety and security.
Let me begin by asking you. Now, you have brought a very personal kind of impact and flair to this job since your coming. There's no question about that. So much so that you made available your personal number. I think it is now to be known as 824 Gary. 848? 482, sorry. 482 Gary. Yes, thank you very much. I have never used it just yet. But in any event, I would like to know, as cryptically as you can, whether, because the answer to this might give us an indication as to the public sentiment. How successful has that medium been with the people of Trinidad and Tobago?
Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't want to say it's a knee-jerk action, but what I noticed is that many citizens, they want to help. They want to provide that support and that information to the law enforcement agencies to ensure that the law enforcement agencies in turn can then protect the citizens. But there's also that fear of reprisal, fear that if it is that they give information, it can come back and it can affect them. So what I did is actually leadership by example, providing if it is that you trust anyone, trust me. At the 482 Gary, that making sure that right within my direct office, we get the information and it can be passed on specifically to the relevant arms in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to ensure that we can take that information, turn it into intelligence for successful operations and hopefully have the evidence to ensure that it is airtight. It has proven to be very effective. As you will see, many of the things that we have done, it involves human intelligence. And it is not at times just dealing with interception or informants, but the general public, that 1.2 million plus extra eyes and ears that they are willing to be part of this. And they wanted that opportunity. In the very near future, that concept of just a cell number it is going to change into something dealing much more with technology, Mr. Chairman. And it will give citizens the opportunity in a much easier manner to pass the information, and then we can take that and sift it into the relevant units, whether it be fraud, cybercrime, OCIU, the CID, or a relevant division, or an emergency response patrol. So that is just a conduit to ensure that information is being passed. May I add also, having recently met with the Metropolitan Police in London, NYPD, and other agencies who previously worked with the Los Angeles Police Department, we need to move with the times. The concept of persons needing to give information, I know sometimes we still look at the system of people reporting to a police station. In London, for example, they have now changed where it is done online. You go online and you can actually you can make a report, and then by putting that report, you don't have to go to the station. We have to change the dynamics of the policing where we have 77 police stations, Mr. Chairman, to deal with 1.3 million. New York City has 71 to deal with 13 million. Is it that we are top heavy with police stations? The more police stations that we have means that less police officers I can get out onto the streets. I have over 2,000 police officers that must guard police stations. if we use technologies, as I mentioned, providing citizens with the opportunity to report a crime online or also to give information online, it reduces the requirements for persons having to go to a police station. And then if there's something that is more serious, that is where it is I will speak about the E999, where it is going to be revamped to ensure you can have an immediate response to a distress call. So it is no longer persons having to come to police stations, persons having to go to police to assist in solving a crime or giving information, but using the concept of technology to assist them whilst also ensuring that they remain secure without fear of reprisal.
Which, of course, the use of the application of best practice technologies is one of the recommendations of the very manpower audit report of which we spoke. And before I give way to my other colleagues, Commissioner, you are described easily by members of the public from my reading and observation as a high-energy operator. And have you been enjoying the cooperation? To what extent have you been enjoying the cooperation of the General Trinidad and Tobago Police Service? And to what extent have you been able, thus far in a very short time, to engender in them that level of high-energy operation as you have personified?
Mr. Chairman, there would be a concern initially because we went into a place where no police officer has gone before, a non-police officer being commissioner of police. What I had to do was not to impose my leadership, but to earn it, because leadership is something that is earned and not won. And that I had to do. I had to prove my worth, to show to each and every police officer that I'm here not just as a leader, but here to serve them. It has to do with serving to lead. And by doing that, and for them to understand that I am really here to just make this a better country, to make this a better Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. By and large, Mr. Chairman, I think that there's overwhelming support. There would be those who would be concerned, which is perfect, which is expected. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is not perfect. Society is not perfect, but police officers come from society, so there would always be persons who may not be the ideal individuals to be police officers. And my job, apart from trying to improve the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to be the best that we can be, it also has to ensure that there are proper systems to measure performance, to provide deterrence, and to ensure that there are consequences. By doing that, it has affected certain individuals, such as my decision to polygraph persons in specific locations in the Southwest Peninsula, or if there's a situation with hundreds of persons on suspension, persons on sick leave for a long time, the overtime situation that was being abused by certain individuals. So yes, I did put my foot down, but it's to ensure that the Trinidad and Tobago citizen can get their money's worth, and that each and every cent spent by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service can be effective. So obviously it was, my style has not pleased each and every police officer, but I am not here to please each and every police officer. I am here to do a job, and I'm here to do it to the best of my ability. I think, however, the police service, there's a renewed energy, not by myself, but by those persons left and right of me. There's a drive, and with that leadership, I think it is being filtered down throughout the police service. And you can actually see it not just by results, but also how the police service, they interact with the public, how they operate. And I think hopefully if we continue to move forward in that direction, the results of crime reduction, but also the taking away the perception and fear of crime and how the public sees the police service, it is also going to improve.
Thank you very much. Member Munilal.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And welcome back to these halls, Mr. Commissioner, and your deputy commissioners. Following up on the last question from the chairman, I'm almost tempted to ask you, have you been enjoying the cooperation of the government? But that is not my focus here. Mr. Commissioner, I just want to get into an issue immediately, which is really, to me, the issue of the day. It involves the crisis that is taking place next door to us, Venezuela. And while the issues surrounding that may involve not just the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, but the wider national security network, of which the police service is a critical element, I wanted to get from you, given the crisis, given what we are seeing, hearing, and reading about the infiltration or the intensive infiltration at the Southwest Peninsula, the issue of migrants, refugees, the attendant criminality that may be involved in that. And I'm referring not only to the explosive report of kidnapping and I think there's a ransom demand of 200,000 United States dollars and a very dramatic and unfortunate picture in the newspaper and so on. Not only that as a crisis, but the wider policing and security crisis, and I'm asking you to speak primarily, of course, from the standpoint of the police. What has been your approach, and what are some of the measures that you have taken or intend to take to really protect that part of the country, to ensure law and order, and to assist in the wider national security threat that we face there, in the background of this being, as you know, also a humanitarian crisis, and there must also be a humane approach to the problem. If you can get a response to that. I'll have other questions on other matters, but I thought that should be the first thing I ask.
Sure, sir. Dealing with this, the first thing that I worked on immediately had to do with communication. Communication with the other agencies, as you spoke about. So the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we cannot operate as a silo. For us to deal with proper policing of our country, it involves a close working relationship with the SSA, with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, with those at the Radar Center, and that is what we are doing. That intensified concept to ensure border protection. You cannot have all the different agencies working as silos. By doing that, it has assisted us tremendously in trying to ensure we know exactly what is required. Also, the importance of intelligence. Intelligence by making sure that we have proper systems to know exactly what is going on. And I can give you, Chairman and the other members, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, whereas in other countries, New York, for example, I think probably 1/5 of the police officers, they drive taxis, they sell hot dogs, they work undercover without other police officers even knowing. That is one of the things that we intend to do, have a covert operative unit to ensure that we can have individuals that can actually ensure that they can provide information to us without even the criminals being aware. By doing that, proper intelligence, it would assist us to know exactly what the situation is. I recall people, initially, they would have spoken and stated that it is the job of the Coast Guard to guard the borders and not the police. Well, I do not intend to shirk my responsibility as the Commissioner of Police, neither would the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The catalyst for intelligence in the national security structure in Trinidad and Tobago is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So we must have the intelligence so that the Coast Guard will be aware of what it is that they need to do, where they need to patrol, and who they need to intercept. So intelligence plays a critical part. We do intend to restructure the intelligence departments to ensure that we can have a better system for intelligence gathering. And again, going back to the concerns you spoke about, it is twofold. We speak a lot about the concerns of our borders based on the illegal ports of entry, which is correct. We are aware of the concerns, especially in the closest proximity to the mainland. And I have heard for far too long the concerns of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service being part and parcel of the problem, because people continue to claim everyone knows where the drugs are coming from, where the weapons are coming from. So how it means that the police are involved. What I did was Boulder Dustra, where all the police officers in Icacos, Cedros, Erin, the Labre, the IATF, and that southwestern peninsula. It was a simple question in the polygraph testing. I have made these units elite units, similar to the special branch, the MOPS, the GEB sort, where if you intend to remain there, you are now in an elite unit in that Western Peninsula, because it plays a critical part to secure our country. And the question is simply that if it is that are you involved in aiding and abetting criminal activity of illegal drugs and weapons entering the country, and do you get any proper remuneration by it taking place? For those who refuse to be polygraphed, they will be reassigned. I cannot take disciplinary measures, but what I need to do is to ensure that that border is properly protected, and I can put my head on a block that police officers who are stationed there, they are doing their job. This, I think, will play a very big part towards weeding out any questionable elements who may be sympathetic or financially gaining from illegal drugs and weapons. However, by doing that, it is much more. We would be working closely with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. We will be monitoring the situation. In the very near future, we intend to utilize air surveillance in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Our air unit will be complemented by drones that will be ensuring that we will be able to monitor that peninsula on a 24/7 basis, with it being fed in real time through the the Operational Command Center that has also recently been established. So what we are going to get is real-time video footage, monitoring the situation, having proper intelligence gathering, making sure we have the right police, the police officers that we can trust, and also, as I mentioned, by working hand in hand with our agencies. And that will also include customs and immigrations in the legitimate ports of entry.
Could I just follow up on that for one moment? And thank you for the outline. Is there any movement today in real time of increased manpower resources and material resources on that part of the island, given the crisis we face by the hour and the crisis we may yet face in the coming days? And secondly, you touched on this issue of the air unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. If for my benefit and viewers and so on, to tell us what so far, what do you have that constitutes the air unit, and what more resources the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service may need if you really have to, come to terms with the challenges that you face? Because over the years, personally, I have not heard much about an air unit in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We are aware of the national security assets, but not the police. So the status of that unit and what is there and what may be required in the future.
Yes, sir. Firstly, we are aware that there's a clear and present danger dealing with what is happening on the mainland. And with that, there's going to be, we'll be redeploying personnel from specific areas into the areas that we can see that there would be a greater concern. And that is being done, I think, by the 1st of February. Oh, no, that's tomorrow. In a few days, that will be done. So we obviously will be redeploying troops, both covert and overt, in the right manner to ensure that we can actually have that border secured. We have regular communication meetings with the other arms of national security, where, as I stated, where we can ensure that one hand knows what the other is doing, so you can have that proper type lockdown, that maritime security wall involving the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Defense Force, and also, as I mentioned, customs and immigration. The other, was it the other?
Just a status on the air unit.
Oh, the air unit, yes. We do have an air division, but initially that air division, it was just drones, but not of a very high standard. Probably just a little higher standard to what you will probably get in Toys R Us. We need to move with the times, the type of technology that you would have Toys R Us.
Part of the air division at one time? Or was it part of national security as opposed to the police?
The airship, sir, was under the Special Anti-Crime Unit, and that was not part of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, our air unit has always comprised, yes, sir.
Yeah, what more, because that issue of the air unit I think is very important given the challenges that we face now. What more you think that must be needed, must be done in terms of bringing that up to strength and up to the technological requirements and so on that needed for modern policing, given the sort of challenges we face now?
I think twofold. So firstly, as I mentioned, the improvement of the quality, the technology of drones, and with those drones, that UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, these UAVs can actually ensure that you can actually go out for several hours. You'll be able to turn night into day. You can have covert operations, monitor situation, lock onto vehicles, lock onto vessels, and be able to monitor the peninsula, but also ensuring that you must get real-time video footage. This is what we have prepared, and this will be done within a few days. And by doing that, we'll be able to monitor and lock the border as quickly as possible. Having said that, another element would involve the use of helicopters. We need that aspect of surveillance for patrolling, but also to ensure the immediate movement of troops in the result that there may be a need for an immediate response by some of the elite units based on a volatile situation. We are looking at that, but I think from the concept of using helicopters because of costs. So I think that this is something that we have been working with the Minister of National Security, and through the National Security Council, I think something is being prepared to ensure that choppers, because of costs, it cannot just be for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. There's a need for that type of technology and assets, but that can be used within all arms of the protective services. So I want to say much more, but that is something that is being dealt with by the Minister of National Security.
To Senator De Freitas, in addition to that, Commissioner, I take it that considerations about maintenance and preservation of these assets in a proper way, quite apart from obtaining access to them.
Sorry?
Yes.
Sir. And most definitely, we can't just be looking for expensive assets, and if it is you do not have the proper maintenance, it will deplete. So we need to look at the requirements of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and by liaising with the Defense Force, the Customs, the Immigration, making sure we get the right type of assets in the use of helicopters, but also making sure that we'll be able to ensure that it is properly maintained and it will not reach to a point where it becomes unserviceable in quick time.
And if I might add, you might agree, and personnel who can operate these assets within the Trinidad and Tobago
Definitely, yes.
to minimize
Yes, sir.
costs. Senator De Freitas.
Thank you, Mr.
And then I'll
Chairman.
recognize Minister Mitchell.
Good evening, Commissioner and deputies. In recent months, since you've taken office, we've seen a number of initiatives being put forward, all towards the benefit of the crime-fighting initiative. One of those initiatives has generated quite a bit of debate, I would say a few months ago. That's the one-shot, one-kill policy. And understanding that when you're dealing with criminals that are armed and dangerous, whose policy, I assume, is to shoot on sight, shoot to kill, and therefore the response of the TTPS would be obviously one shot, one kill. My question is, are you not fearful that as broad-based as that policy has been put forward, that you end up with a situation such as fight fire with fire and everybody gets burned? That's one question. The second question tacked on to that is, do you have any intent to sort of develop that policy? So, for example, you would have that particular response if you meet criminals shooting at you, but in certain tactical situations. So it's not every situation a criminal shoots at you that you go in with a barrage of bullets. You may find that you are in a better tactical position and you're able to take that individual alive without having to fire bullets. So are you going to develop the policy further to have actual settings where you would have that response?
Sir? Yes, sir. If we go, anytime you go on an aircraft and you want to know why you can watch an aircraft with this, but I'll explain my point. When you go on an aircraft and you're doing the safety brief, the first thing they always tell you when it is you have the mask dropped, you ask the persons, make sure you put the mask on yourself first before you protect anyone else, because your first thing is always to help someone. And the reason I refer to this is an example to show that police officers in line of hostile fire cannot protect citizens unless they themselves are protected. They need to protect themselves first for them to protect citizens. And the concept that I have stated, it is not shoot to kill, but it is one shot, one kill. And that is a system to ensure that what I noticed is that police officers, maybe it is they were not protected or defended, to ensure that they know that what their rights are. Their rights must be to protect themselves so that they can protect others. You cannot be in a situation that is volatile where persons are firing semi-automatic rounds, 35 rounds, 5.56, that can be released in mere seconds. And the police officer may wonder, am I going to be protected by my leader? Is it that the leadership is going to turn their back and say, well, you have to fend for yourself because of what you have done? And there's that 1 second hesitation, and that 1 second hesitation can cost the officer his life. Over 40 officers have lost their lives in the last few decades protecting and serving this country with pride. And I have no intention for any other police officer to lose his life, because there's a war out there. And when I say there's a war, we have gang members with semi-automatic rifles with the type of capacity that can do serious damage. If a police officer is not trained, he's not prepared, it can cost him his life. If anyone goes on any range, no range in the world shows you to shoot in your arm or your leg. I have heard this for far too long, where persons who try to be sympathetic or they are concerned when someone is shot by the police, they say, why didn't they shoot them in their arm or leg? My concept has to do with the targets. The targets is a head and a chest. And when you use the head and the chest, it means that it is one shot. And that if it is you aim at the head or chest of an individual, it will be one kill. I can actually, there's another concept. There's something called the double tap method. The double tap method is a chest and head. What will happen if I decide to say that? To take 2 shots, 1 kill. But the reason why they use the double tap is to also to ensure that the person does not get back up. My concept is just to ensure that the police officers are protected. And if at any time a police officer which goes to your second question, sir, then persons challenge me and question my style. This is the first commissioner of police in the history of this country that is actually going to bring forward the minimum use of force. The last year, there were 34 persons that were killed by police officers, 10 in the last quarter, which was under my watch, which meant it was actually less. But in the very near future, in the next few weeks, what I am doing is making sure police officers are trained in verbal persuasion to minimize the threat. Then you will resort to a radio to ensure there is immediate communication. When there's numerical superiority, it automatically allows individuals who want to challenge police to realize, listen, I need to back off. So the police will then have that immediate backup. If that doesn't work, you then move to the other aspect, which is the baton. The police officers are now being trained not to use the baton as pain compliant, but to suppress individuals, not just beating persons that you would have seen in the 60s or 70s when you had the baton, but to ensure that you are trained to know how to use the baton, hold the baton to bring the person down and suppress that individual to ensure that he will not harm himself or the police officer. If that doesn't work, then you move to the next level, which is that of pepper spray. And then after you move to the tasers, and then after the firearm as the last use of force. In contrast to comments made by certain associations, it is not that the police officer can only use his firearm if fired upon. If someone breaks a bottle and puts it to your neck, you have a right to use your firearm. But the firearm must be the last resort. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is providing all of the tools for the police officer to ensure that we will not reach to that point. And that shows that we are doing in total contrast to police abusing their authority, but we are doing all that's required to ensure that lives will not be lost, regardless of who the individual is.
For clarity, good afternoon, Commissioner and deputies. Just because it's following on that point, I just want to be clear on what you're saying in terms of the use of force policy as espoused by you for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, because very often we catch you in sound bites on media, and it may not always tell or give a fulsome account of what you intend with something as critical as this. So the use of force policy regarding officers in relation to the quoted 1 shot, 1 kill, it is in the context of an officer being directly threatened.
Yes, Vice Chairman. It has to do specifically with the reason when it is his life is at risk and there's no other choice he has but to fire. The problem is, what people may have misunderstood is if you feel that a police officer must just shoot, when you draw a firearm is a deadly weapon. And the concept is that when the laws for armed conflict, for minimum use of force, is if fired upon it, deadly force, if you receive deadly force, you can use deadly force. And just listen to the words, deadly force. That is what a firearm is.
And I know I've asked you this before in a different forum. Is there an official use of force policy which encapsulates all that you've just told us, including minimum force persuasion ramping up depending on the threat level, in your own words, and if necessary, in a direct threat, 1 shot, 1 kill to protect the officer's life or anybody else innocently who may be in the vicinity?
Yes, but only when it comes to the last resort. And that is if we never had a minimum use of force policy because there were never the tools provided to the police officer for them to be able to utilize it. So it was straight from verbal persuasion to the firearm. And at times, I must admit, because the officers were not provided with the tools, there may have been occasions where the officer may have been forced to use the firearm, and it should not have been, but he was left with nothing else from verbal persuasion straight to the firearm. By us providing the tools with the belt, with the officers having all of the different assets, the different tools, he now has to be trained to understand how to use the firearm and when that should be used. And there will be different scenarios. We will be given scenarios to the officer for him to understand how it is to be, when it is that each tool needs to be used. And it must not let us, even with the use of the tasers itself requires a specific type of training to ensure that whereas the pepper spray is non-lethal, a taser can become lethal depending on the medical complication of the individual or even how it is aimed at the individual.
Just for my own clarity also, the 1 shot, 1 kill, is it for exchanges with alleged perpetrators with firearms also, or is it also to be engaged with other weapons like cutlasses, etc.? Because that has also been a point of contention in the public domain, where there has been a suggestion that people, assailants are coming toward police officers in a threatening manner with a cutlass or some other piece of wood or weapon, but the officers still, the public still feels there's a one shot, one kill paradigm existing there, when a different approach could have been taken or may have been taken.
Yes, but because there are different options now, it provides the police officer with the capacity and capability to utilize the other tools to have prevented this. If someone is coming with a cutlass and charging into a police officer, the police officer, previously being left with no choice, may have used his firearm. With the use of the tasers or the pepper spray, it will now provide the police officers with the opportunity of the minimum use of force policy. But again, I want to make mention, I wouldn't mention the Law Association, but when it is, something was written stating that, use an example of glass bottles. But as I mentioned, it is not a case that the police officer can only use his firearm if fired upon. If someone cracks a glass bottle and puts it at your neck, and you're a licensed firearm user, you may very well be in good conscience, on safe ground to use it.
You see, and Mr. Chairman, thanks again. And you see, this is the issue, because I think what a lot of people, the problem that they're having with the one-shot, one-kill policy is that you're indicating situations where obviously the police officer's life might have been threatened, and therefore he might want to use his firearm. What we know happens in other jurisdictions is that even though that the situation may be obvious to the average individual, there's still a procedure in place that must be followed. Again, followed up with an assessment as to whether the correct thing happened. What checks and balances will be put in place that even though obvious to the average man that the police officer should have used the one-shot, one-kill policy, that there will be an assessment done to make sure that he did not have another option available to him. Just to use your own example, a bottle put to his neck, the police officer is trained in hand-to-hand combat and may be able to disarm that individual based on his training, which an average person may not be able to do. But if he pulls his gun and kills that individual, what check and balance or assessment is there to say, well, no, you are trained in hand-to-hand combat, you could have disarmed this individual, you should not have used your gun.
Yes. The Professional Standards Bureau, the PSB, and that unit in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they will identify and be able to ensure they do proper investigation to ascertain whether it is that the police officer actually operated within, outside of law, and also the Police Complaint Authority, and which it is that for the first time there's a very close working relationship. Well, sorry, let me refrain. We are now ensuring that we meet with the PCA on a regular basis to deal with concerns. Yes, and so we meet with the PCA on a weekly basis now, looking at the concerns that they have to ensure, again, because we are not here to protect any police officer that may have operated outside of the law. But as I stated, to ensure that this will be minimized, we have to ensure proper training of the police officers, providing them with scenarios for them to understand how it is to be used. I have seen situations where persons, internationally, an individual may put his hand in his pocket, and police officers would have shot the individual, and the individual was just throwing his cell phone. So there will be always different scenarios, and we can go with all sorts of different things. What I would not be able to accept is the concept that each and every police officer is like Keanu Reeves in the Matrix, and we can actually do all these spins and jumps to try to disarm persons in one fell swoop. It does not happen. There is a situation where, to say that a police officer is properly trained, so he must use his martial arts and hand-to-hand skill to subdue the enemy. That is not true. At times it is a case of kill or be killed.
So, but one of the things that the PCA has always clamored for, and this is legislatively, but I guess there can be a workaround, is more teeth to be able to assess situations like that and put checks and balances in place for policies like the one that we're discussing now. You being the Commissioner of Police, where the buck stops, for example, is it that you can work with the PCA? Because one of the things that they indicated was that when they try to get or do an assessment on certain situations like that, they don't get as much cooperation. So you being the Commissioner of Police, are you saying that you are giving full cooperation to the head of the PCA and the PCA department to ensure that there's checks and balances for that one-shot, one-kill policy?
Yes, sir, and not just for that. For all, there are many situations where persons will have reports of police officers for refusing to identify themselves, for abuse, for abusing the authority and the rights of law-abiding citizens. There have been 135 reports by the PCA that actually came to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Unfortunately, we did not even respond to any over the last few years. My job is to deal with each and every one to ensure, and this has to do with consequences. So if police officers are aware that there are consequences, and if it is that I know that you could write to the PCA and nothing will happen, there's a close relationship we have now with the Police Complaint Authority. It is not witch hunting. It is to ensure that the employers are the citizens of this country. We work for the citizens of this country. We have no intention to abuse our authority, and the PCA is an avenue for us to ensure that that happens. So we meet weekly with my legal department, the PSB, the PCA, and myself on most occasions. We look at all of the different situations, especially with situations involving police officers with the use of firearms.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, for my part, let me commend you for the high level of accountability that you've brought to the Office of Commissioner of Police. But I want to change tack a little bit. You mentioned in your opening statement the issue of gang activity, and with that, I take it to mean organized crime. Now, from my research, about 90% of all crime are profit-driven. The other 10%, crimes of passion. Can you tell us your plans? Can you tell us your plans in terms of taking that illicit profit out of crime? Because profit is the main driver of crime.
Dealing with criminology, there's a concept that shows that crime is a product of opportunity. The greater the deterrent, the less likelihood persons would commit crime because there's a greater possibility of being apprehended. Our job is to take away that product of opportunity by doing what you just spoke about, so providing the deterrence. And again, going back to gang-related activity, our job is to, as much as possible, try to dismantle gangs, try to use the relevant legislation to the best of our ability. 7 persons have been arrested at this time and prosecuted dealing with gang-related activity. So there is a deterrent that we are seeing, but it is also to make sure the gangs are dismantled and they do not operate as an organization. As I mentioned, I think it's over 75% of the homicides, it is gang-related. So we need to take away that opportunity. And again, yes, and again, with the proceeds of crime, looking at all the different avenues to prevent gang activity, but also looking at what you spoke about with the opportunity. We have heard for far too long people will complain that we only focus on the gangs and those individuals who are involved from that echelon where in the streets. What do we deal with white collar? The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, in our restructuring, we intend to look at all elements to reduce crime. What I did notice is that we have different units try to deal with white collar crime, but at times you may have one unit that will be doing an investigation on an individual and another unit doing another investigation on the same individual, and they did not know. So with the formation of an investigative division, which is a white collar crime unit, we'll be bringing in the different units from the financial investigation branch, the fraud squad, the cybercrime, and the information from the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau, having them under one umbrella to ensure that information is fed between all those agencies to deal with the problems of white-collar crime.
And another issue. Citizens are very concerned, as am I, with these videos that we now see on social media, where there is a trend of a police officer or officers going into communities to arrest persons, and those police officers, their authority being challenged. And persons are surrounding these officers, trying to prevent the arrests. Now, I know you spoke about these non-lethal weapons, which I totally agree with, but there seems to be a lot of training that needs to be provided to these officers to deal with that situation. Because I can see and I could understand if being totally overwhelmed, an officer may discharge his weapon or may feel threatened because it's a subjective test. It's what the officer believes. Can you?
So in training, dealing with counter-revolutionary operations and crowd control, riot control, there's a difference between crowd control and riot control. There was an incident yesterday. I am dealing with it, sir. I am not here to state that we are on top of our game. But again, throughout this year, there's going to be comprehensive training for all police officers to understand the minimum use of force and to deal with situations such as what you spoke about. I do have a serious concern, however, before I mention that, of the concept that communities have now where they feel that it is their right to intervene and infringe on stop and prevent police officers from doing their job. It is a concept of comply and then complain. Police officers, they're doing their job. Nobody in the community must feel that they become judge and jury to be able to say that that individual must not be held. He must not be arrested. And then persons will actually retaliate. And then when they retaliate, the police officers, again, it has to do with the training for the police officers to know how to suppress the individual whilst he's retaliating, but also for the community to understand it is not business as usual, where you believe it is your right to circle police officers. It goes back to what I spoke about with the minimum use of force. Police officers are going to be trained to understand the use of communication. You make the call and you get backup. You cannot have police officers with 2 and 3 police officers trying to deal with a situation to arrest one individual in a community, and the whole community, it's a that's a wolf pack syndrome where they all get excited, they start to scream, somebody is going to have a camera and they must be seen in the background, he didn't do anything, leave him alone. And this has to stop. Having said that, we intend to, through that minimum use of force, the situation yesterday, I will give you an example. The police officers should not be going in a situation where they have their rifles slung over them. In the drills for crowd control, it does not allow that. In fact, it prevents the police officer from being capable to deal with crowd control because of the rifle. So the drills comprise for crowd control. You have individuals with the shields, you have the batons, the police officer will then come forward, speak to the person who is perceived as the ringleader, advise him, counsel him, warn him. If he does not adhere to the direction, the police will then extract him. He's then brought in the back. So most of the police officers on the ground will not be armed. However, there would be armed officers who would be snipers in case, heaven forbid, there's some type of reprisal, so the police must have it. But dealing with the concept of crowd control, they must not have the actual rifle slung over you. And knowing how it is you deal with trying to suppress and hold an individual to have him pulled in.
Richards, you see, the way the thing evolves and develops in the communities around Trinidad, based on the videos that my colleague made reference to, the police would be on their usual patrol. For example, the IATF. 4 persons in a vehicle, might be a combination of soldiers, police, Coast Guard. Anyway, they're on the patrol, and then something develops. So they are on patrol. And then as they go into the community and this issue develops, the situation, this ungainly situation with the crowds coming around them, leave the man alone, don't lock him up, and so on. And the man didn't do nothing, and all of these things. When that happens, the police officers are there with their rifles. They can't leave them in the vehicles and so on. So this is where this question of communication is critical. As soon as this begins to develop, one thinks they should be able to call appropriately attired and appropriately equipped officers to deal with it, which makes that ability to communicate so very critical. I agree with that. Senator Richards.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner and deputies, I just want to switch gears a bit to focus on one of the aspects that engaged quite a bit of discussion from this committee following the interrogation of the police manpower audit through Professor Deosaran, your immediate predecessor, and your colleagues here today, which was an internal challenge, a significant internal challenge in the police service, which was HR and strategic HR management. And I would like to get a sense from you on how you plan to deal with what seems to, from what we were able to glean from that manpower audit, of significant HR challenges, which in many of the aspects of HR would have led to the poor performance in many measurement matrices of the police service, and specifically related to coming from recruitment, selection, training academy, and your vision for the revolution or transformation of that, assessments of officers through performance measurement, the promotion systems, which I think you already have started in some measure, to deal with the, and I know it's a lot, the integration of professionals who may not be police officers into the service, who may bring required competencies in a modern police service context, and the issue of succession planning and an EPA system where officers who may have been engaged in violent interactions with assailants or criminals would, in those instances, have some sort of psychological debriefing. And officers' psychological debriefing generally, as we've seen on 2 occasions last year that I remember, where there were personal issues that were not dealt with, which led to some public confrontations between officers, not painting the service in too positive a light. So I know it's a lot. So I wonder if you could deal with those HR issues and then the EPA issues, please.
Yes, sure. So if I miss any, you could just remind me. That manpower audit, I think, will play a very critical part towards trying to ensure the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service can operate at maximum capacity. Many times, I recall over a decade or so ago, an acting commissioner of police said that we need 10,000 police officers. But there was never a proper system to ensure that we can maximize the manpower strength in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And we may very well need less than what we have now. The manpower audit has done, it would do this, but we have to implement. My job is not to have, we have seen so many of these proposals over the last few years, and it's in the office of the Commissioner of Police and even the Minister of National Security, it has become a fire hazard with all of these documents, and it is not being implemented. I intend to ensure it is implemented this year. We have already started. We have timelines for each and every recommendation made at that manpower audit. What we have to do is to implement it. Quickly, as I can mention, we have situations that we have realized now where there's even the duplication of effort, where the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we have civilian staff, but you will have a police officer practically doing the same thing. What we intend to do is to move out police officers as much as possible out of the administration. In some countries, you don't even have the police officers behind the desks at police stations. So what we are doing is trying to make sure police officers get back out, get onto the streets, bring back in foot patrols. But to do that, we need to utilize the manpower strength. As I mentioned earlier, 2,000 plus police officers we use to guard the police stations. Do we need 77 police stations?
But if I could just interrupt you a bit, among the included in the contributions that from stakeholders that came before us, there were definite issues of training. People couldn't write reports in books, in the police report books. They were not trained properly. They were disciplined as different from corruption issues. There were performance issues. There were issues with people staying home and being paid. All these HR issues came together in what was a perfect storm in many instances, which contributed to very poor performance. And my concern is, or my question is, what are the timelines and how are you going to deal with these issues which impact performance and eventually public trust and confidence?
Yes, I was coming to that, sir, but I was just speaking firstly about the numbers. So getting the numbers correct, making sure we can maximize the manpower strength. We have police officers, we have 8-hour shift. We have situations, as I mentioned, with overtime. And making sure we have systems now to measure performance. I will give you a simple example. If a police officer has refused to to act in a certain position. I have an officer who did not want to act because he saw that he was getting overtime. If he acted, he would not get overtime. But then he was the first person to apply for the position, be examined, and came first. Now, when I looked at the performance appraisal, it was 25 out of 25. That individual should never have been promoted. But until you have our assurance that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are going to measure performance. Persons cannot operate in a manner where they feel that because they are very good at an exam, they will just not do anything. We are going to be looking not just of the records in the examinations, but their performance appraisal during the period that they were there. If you have police officers with certain matters pending before them, certain officers who were insubordinate, indisciplined, they failed to operate in an effective manner, an officer who did not want to act in a position, but when it came to the substantive position, he applied for the post and was given 25 out of 25. So yes, we have made mistakes. I am not here to deny it. What I can give you the assurance is now we are putting systems to measure performance, make persons accountable, and make them be aware that there are consequences.
And on the intake side, how do you see the transformation of the police training academy? Because that will play a big role in the intake part of this whole equation.
We are actually reviewing that whole curriculum to ensure that the Trinidad and Tobago police officer can be properly trained within that 6 month, that period, that when he comes out, and there is a continuation. I think when we do the evaluation to select persons as police officers, even the polygraph testing, it has also to be amended because there are questions that we have lost many persons who have applied for the position, and the sort of questions that they've been asked is questions in the modern era most persons will fail. I wouldn't want to mention what some of those questions are, but the fact of the matter is that that is also being changed to ensure that we can get the best officers. The training facility, training as well, it is not just in policing, but an important aspect to deal with customer service training, public relations, how you speak to people, how you act with them, how it is you deal with a situation. We intend to change the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the officer, to be the most customer service-oriented individual that we can have, and that will play a very big part. You also spoke about the professionals. We are changing the system now, so whereby it is not a case of just persons being police officers that would be in the police service. Through the concept of SRPs, there are many specific elite units that because of technology, CSI, fraud, cybercrime, other places of forensic, where individuals can come in who may be qualified but may never have held a firearm or been trained as a police officer. We would be having the expertise in these fields of persons to become SRPs, to be able to complement and facilitate and work with the other police officers in these specific elite, specialized fields to assist them.
A different vision for SRPs. It's not the old vision for SRPs.
The value of the SRP, I think it can be utilized. We have diminished it to the point of it is no longer going to be what people refer to it as, with the meaning of SRP. It is to make sure that we can utilize that opportunity to bring in highly qualified persons who have the capability to improve these units that can assist us in crime scene investigation, fraud, and other units.
Finally, before I give you just the last part about the EPA system and a constant clamor for myself anyway, for what should be mandatory psychological debriefing for officers who have been engaged in those violent encounters, and also for officers who have personal issues within the service, which may translate to poor performance or danger to themselves or others.
The present system has already been totally revamped. The EAP system, I think it is very unfortunate. It is, in general, it is one where they are specialists in fields, they stay in the office, and if someone has a concern, they will then come forward to ask for assistance. Having been in one uniform for 17 years, and then in this uniform, I think the persons with the biggest ego and pride are persons in uniform, where they find it is very difficult for them to be able to state that, listen, I need help. And that is what has happened, where we have situations where police officers have been involved in situations of suicide or attempted suicide, and the EAP department will not have known. It can be one of a push method where I must come to you. The system is being changed in the EAP, whereby the division commanders, the leaders are going to be trained to pick up the red flags, to be able to see if this individual has a problem, And he can now do the pull method by bringing the person in and have that person properly spoken to and advised. That was never done. We were waiting on individuals to come to get the support. It is going to be the other way around now. So through that system, it is going to ensure that you can pick it up. Persons who work far too often, we have seen individuals, there's a concern, and we wait, waiting for him to come to get help. We intend to provide that help before it is requested.
On that point, that situation, as you described it, with the pride in the uniform and the weaknesses that you have correctly identified, is severely exacerbated when fellow police officers treat with the issue as a matter for ridicule and scorn and laughter, as we read happened a few months ago, I think, in the East. So it really involves all parties. Let me, before I give way to Dr. Munilal, let me put to you a real situation here, Commissioner. As you spoke a while ago about training in response to Senator Richards. Yesterday, a citizen in my own constituency described the neighborhood in which he lived as a war zone. I have reason to support that description, having heard from other people in that community. And I represent Laventille West. In my interface with that citizen yesterday, who came for help, wanting an HTC house to get out, that was the help he sought. I inquired about his contact with the police. He made it passionately and abundantly clear to me, and I added those two adjectives to impress upon you that I don't think he was joking or playing or pretending. It was real, emotional, and very passionate. He made it very clear to me that he was afraid to speak to the police. Because as far as he was concerned, and I'm only being the devil's advocate here, I have no comment on the truth or otherwise of it. I'm just reporting to you, Commissioner, what the citizen said to me yesterday. He's afraid to report it to the police because he is of the view that some of them police, if I may quote him, involved in the gang thing. I questioned him as to that, and he explained what he meant by that, is that some of the police support either of the warring factions. I put that live and real situation to you in the context of our discussions today, touching on concerning public confidence, touching on concerning training, touching on concerning the way the community feels. I felt what he told me yesterday, and I just went blank. What would your general, I would like to hear, well, I mean, it's a matter for you, but I would like to hear what is the police's reaction to that? Just assume that what I've told you is impeccably true. What I've reported is impeccably true. What is your reaction as the police service to that?
Hearing that comment certainly is unfortunate. We have heard comments like that before. However, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is here to uphold the law and to enforce the law. And obviously, we have to be impartial and certainly not take sides, and in particular, wherever there's criminal activities. However, in some communities, sometimes perceptions may not, it may be a perception, there may not be evidence, but sometimes certainly persons come to perception for one reason or the other. But what the policy across the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and what we implore upon our officers is that we, as an organization, we are here to ensure that every criminal activity or every criminal, we target each and every one of them, and we are not to take any sides with respect to criminal activity.
Chairman, if I could just, and I understand your comment, DCP Philip, and due process is important when officers are being accused of corruption. But the public is not satisfied from feedback I am getting that the service seems to be as vigilant with allegedly corrupt officers as criminals on the outside. And that continues to erode public confidence, even though Mr. Griffith's appointment has certainly brought a fillip of confidence. No matter how good, great, honest officers are, corrupt officers who are not brought to justice in a public manner with due process also serve to undermine public confidence and trust. And
which case, Commissioner, you told us earlier that you have converted the police from the southwestern tip of the island, the operators down there, into an elite unit. In which case, based on what Senator Richards has just said, is it within your contemplation, is it possible that those who operate in the theaters of the war zones, and in light of what I've said, and certain other units, could they be treated similarly as elite units and be assessed as being suitable for those jobs? I mean, like your task forces and your special other operators.
Yes, sir, definitely. This is the concern, however. I can't do that. I intend to, because there are elite units where it is persons must be polygraphed. But when we start to make that shift, so we deal with it with IATF, we deal with it with SORT, we deal with it with fraud, with cyber. Eventually, there'll be no place to put many of them. Because the Commissioner of Police, I do not have the authority to fire persons based on refusal to be polygraphed. What I thought amazing is that every single person who wants to be a police officer, they will be willing to be polygraphed for everything prior to recruit training. When you get in, all of a sudden your rights are there. I presently have over 150 persons that have taken me to court for all sorts of different things, from not being promoted to firearms not being issued to police officers who feel that they should promotion and other aspects. So everyone has their right. So I can use polygraph testing to reshuffle and reassign, but I can't use it to remove. So eventually, there are units I must look at, and I agree with you. So the Southwestern Peninsula is one, but the polygraph testing is just one avenue. By using the system, the online reporting that citizens can have, as I said, many citizens say that they know who the criminals are, they know who the drug lords are, they know how the drugs get into the country, they know who are the questionable police officers. Well, then bring it to us. But they need to be, it must be brought with the assurance that there will be no reprisal, which is what we do with the online or for the 482 Gary and other things. But the more we get that, we can actually look at it and turn and get information and turn to intelligence. It does not mean that the intelligence could become evidence that we can charge police officers, but we are fully aware of police officers who we know they are questionable. What we intend to do, however, as well, as Mr. Dulalchan just briefed me on, is that we need to ensure rotation. Sometimes persons become complacent, they stay in one area, they work in one area, they get so accustomed to individuals in the community, they become part of the situation. So that also is what we will be doing.
Just quickly, just 1 second. 482 Gary is great, but 482 Gary and Gary as the centralized figure, in my humble opinion, cannot be the long-term answer.
Yes, sir. It is a stopgap. As I said, that was a knee-jerk just for a few months until we get the system with the online reporting.
Chairman, with your leave, Senator Ramdin wants to ask some questions that I was intending to ask. So I may follow up after if I can give way to Senator Ramdin. Yeah. But I prefer him to start, but I have a couple matters on that as well.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, good afternoon again. Commissioner, in December of 2017, that's about 8 months before you were appointed, the country was told that with respect to this anti-gang fight, and with respect more particularly to the anti-gang legislation, the country was told that the police had all of the information about how many gangs, where they were, their addresses, their gang members. And that built up an expectation in the population that once this legislation was passed, people would start to see that the police service, the TTPS, would be going after these gangs. we were told that your predecessor, there was an affidavit that he filed with all of this information. And this legislation came into effect in May of this year, and one would have expected that we would see some results. You came into office in August, and you've been in office for 6 months. The legislation has been there for about 9 months now. You mentioned earlier in your introduction that out of 517 homicides, almost 80%, which is about 400 homicides for the year, are gang-related. I think that the country is becoming a little bit frustrated by the idea that we were told that the TTPS, to use the exact words that we were told, the TTPS was begging for this legislation. And therefore, when the legislation was proclaimed in May of last year, the country had an expectation that we will start to see people being arrested, people being prosecuted, and there would be some kind of curbing of this gang activity. And with that, there would be a decrease in serious crime, homicides, and etc. What is it that has caused there to be a damping of this expectation? Why have we not seen the success that the country expected, that once this legislation goes in place, we would have seen an attack then from the TTPS on these gangs and gang activity? And why is it that expectation has not materialized? And I would like to get, or the country would like to get, the view of the side of the TTPS, because I just want to end this question by saying that the impression that is being given out there is that those who have the responsibility for making the law have done their part, and therefore the responsibility is shifted from them to those who have to enforce the law. And now that the legislation is in place, well, the blame falls at the feet of the TTPS. I don't think that we want to know whether that is a fair assessment of what the position is.
The Anti-Gang Law Commissioner.
Certainly, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service welcomed the anti-gang legislation. However, as we try to enforce it and implement the law, the evidence that is required, as you said, we did have information, but in order to substantiate the evidence required to, in fact, prosecute persons under the anti-gang law, we are working feverishly, investigating a number of cases trying to deal with the legislation. And hopefully, in the near future, certainly we would see much more prosecutions taking place under the anti-gang.
DCP Philip, one of the main things that those who are involved in national security will say, or those who have the experience will say, is that the problem is really that you have to get people willing to come forward who are members of a gang to give evidence and information, or information that can be turned into evidence to substantiate a prosecution. Now, the TTPS can do its part, but you are only able to get people to actually come forward if they have the confidence that when they bring that information to the TTPS, one, it will be secure, and two, as the Commissioner said, there won't be any reprisals. A significant tool in making that happen is the Witness Protection Program. What has been the response in terms of the Witness Protection Program and the working together? Like the Commissioner says, we were told all along that national security cannot be siloed. The Witness Protection Program is a most crucial tool in getting people to come forward and give evidence to the police on the basis that when they give that evidence, they will have the protection that nobody will kill them or their family. How has that been working?
I want to say the Witness Protection Program, the Justice Protection Program, in fact, that has been working pretty well, and we would have seen that in most instances, most of the witnesses to the program are in fact there based on the most serious of the crimes, which is generally homicides. So in fact, the Witness Protection Program have in fact been facilitating these witnesses. We have, we have witnesses in the program for, just as you know how the court system operates, for some years, and it is in fact working pretty well. So when we look at the Anti-Gang Act, certainly even one of the ways you mentioned in first, in fact, prosecute persons as witnesses coming forward, as well as there are other aspects where the police themselves gather the intelligence and by use of technology and other means. But certainly, we have identified the witness protection program to help us to secure witnesses.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'm in the same area, so we can pursue that. Now, unless I heard wrong initially, we were told that to date, 7 persons have been prosecuted. Are those persons under the anti-gang legislation? Are those prosecution or charged before the court? Just for the record, what is the status of these 7? That's one question, but I have a more substantive issue to raise now. Clearly, I don't have to repeat Senator Rambin, but clearly the gang-related violence is central to the national challenge of crime fighting. As the Commissioner said earlier, murder is normally the barometer by which we judge, although it is not the only area of crime that concerns citizens. There's a lot of insecurity in the country. Citizens feel that as a result of robberies, of breaking, of stealing cars, and so on. But on the anti-gang matter, Mr. Commissioner, I know recently you had some visits abroad to New York, London, elsewhere, and so on. I want to know whether you are considering some type of fundamental transformation of the anti-gang unit or the anti-gang program, given not only the challenges raised by the chairman, which is a real challenge in a small society and so on, because there's a limit, as you said, there's a limit as to how much people you could transfer and where you transfer them to. Eventually, you'll make a circle and they'll come back to the same place. And there's a limit as to how many units you could make elite. Then one day there will be no non-elite unit. So the issue really is that, have you considered any type of foreign technical or manpower or other material resources in dealing with this serious national crisis we have here with gangs, given the experiences that I think you're aware of yourself in New York, in Los Angeles, in London, and other places that have had to deal with rampant gang violence over the last 2 or 3 decades? Would you indicate whether you're looking at some type of in this country, when we hear foreign, sometimes some people don't like to hear foreign help, but some type of technical manpower assistance or resource help or technical help from abroad, where other jurisdictions, other communities have had this problem, and maybe to a greater extent.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Just firstly to the first. No. The first question about the witness protection, I just want to clarify to continue. There was an incident that took place on the newspaper, on news last night, pertaining to an individual in the witness protection program, and it will go hand in hand with what you just spoke about. In contrast to the perception people have, the witness protection program, there's been a 100% success in the persons under the witness protection program not being harmed. 100%. And there's a difference between witness protection and the state witness. Someone could be a state witness, but they're not under the witness protection program. So the witness protection program has been very successful. We're one of the few countries in the world where 100% successful, where no one has ever been harmed when they get into the program. The same individual also stated that she was held against her will. But she was held against her will, yet she was able to get across on TV6 to do an interview and then go back in. So that alone shows that it was totally inaccurate. You're being held against your will, but you'll get to leave to do an interview to say that you were held against your will to get back in. So there were certain irregularities, and I would like to use this as an opportunity to explain to the public the success of the witness protection program. Going back to Dr. Mundal, your point, you're quite correct. The concern with dealing with gangs, and again, elite units comes in. When we get tip-offs, we get intelligence, we try to deal with an operation with gang warfare in a specific area with police stations. There may be, if 5% of the country is corrupt, it may very well be that 5% of the police service would be, even though we expect it to be at a higher standard. So if you have a police station with, say, 50 officers, there may very well be 2 or 3 police officers that may be affiliated, sympathetic, or financially support certain gangs. So what we have done is through the use of the Special Operation Response Team, that SWOT team, we have them heavily polygraphed. When we get intelligence now from our intelligence agencies, It is not fed back to each and every police officer in each and every station, but that is where we have been very successful in the operations you would have seen over the last few months with the hundreds of millions in illegal drugs, weapons being seized, persons being held, even dealing with the kidnappings, where we don't just go to the stations, but we deal with it in a matter of confidentiality on a need-to-know basis. And it has assisted us, and it will continue to assist us dealing with gang activity, inclusive of the covert operatives. As you spoke about international assistance, you're quite right, sir. The liaison with Scotland Yard, they have assisted me greatly for me to know the direction we should go to deal with intelligence gathering, especially with gang warfare, and also with NYPD. We signed an MOU with the NYPD. It is not for us just to piggyback and use everything that is done by NYPD. Chairman and others, I find it is very unfortunate that certain persons, they always see the glass half empty. They always find the negativity of everything. We signed an MOU with NYPD, and persons criticize of the few negative things you would have seen with NYPD. We're not going to use the few negative things. Our concept is to look at what caused NYPD to be changed from the mid-90s, where officers were known as pigs, to within 20 years later, they became known as America's finest. What caused the homicide rate to be over 1,000 in New York City to reach down to less than 294? What did they do? How did they use it? And that is what I have been able to acquire. And we will be doing that by bringing officers here to assist us in intelligence gathering, operations, crime scene investigation, forensic testing, leadership, technology, systems to measure performance, ensure accountability, good management, and good leadership, and also sending our officers to New York City. But also that concept with NYPD, they showed us how it is they were able to deal with gangs from social media units and so forth. But something just as important, Chairman and other members, it is not just about the hard policing to prevent gang activity. But NYPD, they changed from the stop and frisk method in 2001 to 2014, I think. They moved to something known as street talk. And that is what we intend to do. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, as much as we may try to apprehend and arrest those persons and to put them where they belong, if we leave that void and persons are arrested, others will just take their place. And that is why it is so important that we need to look at the social avenues to deal with crime, where young persons must start seeing role models of not persons that may have their pants hanging way below their waistline, but those in uniform, those persons who can be good role models to go in there. So what you'll be seeing is a heavy social aspect to deal with gang warfare, of us going into the communities, it'll be known as street talk, where police officers, it is not a case of us having meetings in a community center on a table and speaking to persons, but getting out on the street, sitting down on the corners, going by the bars, playing football and so forth with young persons, hearing their concerns, hearing their needs, understanding what is required for them to move from looking up at these individuals who they see as Robin Hoods and their role models, who are gang leaders, to start realizing, let me utilize my energies, my talent, away from a life of crime. So I support our services, the street talk, a major concept of the Commissioner's Cup with football being used throughout the 12,000 members in our youth groups of over 100 plus. You will be seeing a heavy aspect. And so the NYPD, it is not just about hard policing, but finding ways to deal with us working with the communities.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner, because I had intention to go in that direction as well. Now, again, they're extremely good ideas and certainly the cutting-edge policy direction that's required in these days. Now, just as the chairman gave us an example, I think yesterday you met someone, you said. Yesterday, in the vicinity of my office, I'll tell you in 10 seconds or 15 seconds, a big truck passed with some cars packed on it, this scrap iron thing, and they pulled down TNTEC wire, TSTT wire. You had a situation where you have a live electrical wire from TNTEC on the ground in a gas station, in the compound of a gas station. There was a sense of uncertainty and fear in the area. I asked my staff, quickly call the police because the driver of the vehicle was a bit irate, angry, and so on. Now, we did call the police. Thankfully, there was no one hurt. The police response was that if it's a TNTEC post, call TNTEC. If it's a TSTT post, call TSTT. Now, I tell you that to make a point now, is not to do anything more than to tell you that when you introduce programs like Street Talk and mentoring for young people and so on, there must be, and what is your view and what are some of the programs and projects for this massive retraining of the police officers that will allow you to get, to get the kind of police officer you want to fit into these type of programs that you intend to advance? Because as it is now in our constituencies, and I think the gentlemen around you have been all around this country in these meetings with the community and so on. And one of the biggest issues that people will raise, the normal people, will always be the response, the attitude of police officers, how they speak to the public, whether they don't see the public as a client, but sometimes as a nuisance. And yes, people can be a nuisance too, we're not saying no. But I think that's a dramatic challenge that the police will have to face to introduce the programs that you would like to put in place. So I wanted your views on this matter.
Yes. Yeah. Sure, sir. Well, two things. Again, you're quite correct. However, I think if it starts from the top, how it is that the First Division officers, how we relate to the public, how we relate to the media, and it will filter down. And I think over the last few months, we have started seeing it along that direction. I am not saying that it will turn overnight. And again, but it is horses for courses. So there are certain police officers that, regardless of what, you're not going to change their style, how it is there. And those are the individuals you need not to put at roadblocks, not to do breathalyzer testing. What we intend to do is to make sure those frontline police officers in the emergency response patrol that will be there doing are involved in roadblocks, breathalyzer testing. That is the focus that we intend to push as quickly as possible. How they speak to the public, how they react, how it is they deal with a situation. So obviously we can't deal with all almost 7,000 plus police officers to train them into proper customer service training. But we're looking at the frontline persons as officers as much as possible. Dealing with your other matters, sir, I hear you and I acknowledge the fact that there is a concern about response and how police officers relate. I can give the public the assurance that in the next few months, you're going to see a massive turnaround in this situation. Whereas before, police persons will contact a police station to ask for something, and the police officer at the station may not have well, I wouldn't say training, but not have the capability to understand the serious nature of the concern, or the tools based on a lack of resources. So would have heard for years, we do not have a vehicle available and so forth. What we are doing is changing the whole concept it will start firstly with the 999. The 999 you will no longer be getting a situation where you're put on hold, you're getting an answering machine. We are going to have a response within seconds of the person answering, but it doesn't stop there. That 999 is now going to be immediately linked to a dispatch officer. The dispatch officers now, there will be 9 dispatch officers for each of the 9 divisions. So the operator will then get the information, send it immediately to, say, Western Division, Port of Spain, Southern, Southwestern, Tobago, Eastern, or so forth. And they now will be able to look at the call, analyze the serious nature of the call by it being a level coded, level 1 to 3. Level 3 is someone stole, I had 5 mangoes in my tree, I got up this morning, I saw 3 mangoes. You don't need an immediate response to that. You need an immediate response. So based on the resources that we will have. And the reason I'm saying this is now, of course, and that is where it become level 1. So with that now, linking the 999 to an emergency response is what we never had before. Because of the launch of the emergency response patrol, these are 85 vehicles that will all be staying in their area of responsibility. Every division will have 8 to 10 vehicles, depending on the size of the division and the threat of that division. So say, for example, Western Division, there will be 9 vehicles odd. The 9 vehicles will now be monitored through an operational command center that has also been ignited, and a commissioner's command center. So we are able now to firstly see it's a room about this size. You're welcome to look at it, where we have their screens around this whole the room. You can see where the call is, and now the dispatch officer can look at the vehicles in closest proximity to that call. So if, for example, you have 9 vehicles in the Western Division, and you plaster that in Pity Valley, Caranage, Diego Martin, Cocorite, and they stay in their area of responsibility, you can get a response within seconds, if not maximum of 5 minutes. What this is going to do, it provides high visibility, a rapid response, and a heavy deterrent. The dispatch officers in the Operation Command Center will now be able to ascertain where the vehicles are. He can now ensure that vehicles do not break the speed limit, which citizens have always been concerned about. He can verify if a vehicle has been parked in one area for too long. He can tell them what is happening. It triggers a red flag if they leave their division, and it makes sure that you keep a blanket in that specific division. So this will ensure you'll have an immediate response. By the 999 call, we'll be asking the citizens, you have a concern, call 999. Do not call the station. So the emergency response patrol is designated to respond to all calls, and those will be the first response. And by doing that, that will ensure that it will minimize greatly the concerns that the citizens had in the past.
Member Mitchell, just for clarity, these 8 to 10 vehicles per police division are going to be there in addition to the usual police strength.
Yes, sir. So
And they will be responding to all calls and therefore can be on the scene of the victim in quick time.
Yes, sir. And again, based on the serious nature of it, the operator can then look and realize this is a situation that may require 3 or 4 ERP vehicles.
Right.
And by using that numerical, those numbers,
Yes.
it can minimize a situation almost immediately.
Yes. So finally, for me, on this matter, you have described, yes, Mr. Dulalchan, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a bit.
Yes.
In addition, and we all speak about public trust and confidence. What Commissioner would have done also recently was, you know, from your experience, nobody morning report coming every 24 hours. So what we would have done is that we have a status report coming every 4 hours. So every 4 hours, a status report about all crimes, all occurrences, anything unusual. And that is now, there is in fact a WhatsApp group that all the DCPs, the commissioner, and all the commanders. So they do not have to wait until 24 hours to know what is happening. So every 4 hours. So based on what occurs, they can now ask questions and ensure that they have follow-up and so on. And I believe that will go quite a long way. For example, this morning, when I look at the status report, I was told, well, for the last 6 hours, no serious crime. So I was happy. So it kind of gives you a gauge every 4 hours. Not what is only happening in your respective division, but what is happening in the entire country, including Tobago. Thank you very much.
Accountability, which is very, very good. Mr. Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Commissioner, a very important part of our tourism offering is our festival and event product. A lot of the promoters of these events, they've complained about the extra duty that they have to pay. And there's a feeling that the job of the police is to police, and they ought not to have to pay the large amount of money that they have to put towards extra duty. And these events are, for them, becoming uneconomical. What is the new policy with respect, what is the present policy with respect to extra duty? And are you going to reform the police in that area?
Yes, we are aware of the concern. But what we have done, and I think the Fed promoters, if you speak to them now, you will see there's a difference. And what we are doing is communication. And that communicating with the Fed promoters, there have been, 3 or 4 meetings we had with the Fed promoters, even prior to the carnival season, in anticipation for this. So it is no longer a situation where it may be perceived that the police service, what we are just doing is just giving you numbers and you have no choice. That, in fact, was not the case in the past. What we are doing in the present, however, is to ensure that there's proper dialogue. Prior to any event, every single event for the carnival season, we deal with it as an operation. There are over 200 events. At some of the larger events, there will be a venue operations center. There will be the use of a mobile command center. But prior to the event, we are going to do reconnaissance on the ground with the Fed promoter, looking at the threats, looking at the concerns, and then we are actually informing the Fed promoter as to where the police officers will be stationed. By doing this, the Fed promoter, I think they're starting to understand it is not a case of just saying 30 police officers. We explain that you need 3 by this gate, you need 2 by this fence, you need 4 to block off this road. So by doing this now, I think they're starting to understand and they appreciate the value and the importance of the police officers. And it is not a case of us just increasing or escalating the strength and the numbers based on a perception of financial gain. There's also, because of the previous concern of cash being paid, we are now opening an account where no longer it will be a situation where cash is to be given to any one specific police officer or a check being given to a police officer, but it is put into one account and then it is then given to the police officers who actually perform duty.
But is it that within the events, the FET promoters are not entitled, or the citizens are not entitled to be policed freely? Well, without charge?
Well, what happens is that under normal circumstances, on a daily basis, we would have a detail of police officers because we work 24 hours and we would have a roster. And even if you have an event, we would decide, if it's a free event, as the case is, we would want to put some extra officers of which we would have to pay overtime. But when you have a paying event and a private event, of which is not a national event, the law requires us, if you need the services of extra police officers, the law has provision for extra duty. How we allocate persons for extra duty was just explained by the commissioner. And sometimes, you know, some of the promoters, one of the things with some of the promoters is that sometimes they are all not sincere. They may tell you that an event will have 1,000 persons, and lo and behold, when you go there, it's really 4,000 and 5,000 persons, you know. And what we do is that we plan for the worst and hope for the best. So it's a very serious situation when you have large numbers of persons and given today where we have some risk, be it terrorism and all of these things, we want to ensure that we properly police and that the event is safe. And by and large, we are working together to ensure that they agree with the numbers, just as the commissioner mentioned.
So with that communication, I expect what I get from you is that there's an objective basis, logical basis that you come up. There's some formula that you come up with the numbers.
Yes, and it is not just based on the number of persons who will be attending the event. If you have 20,000 persons attending Jehovah's Witness event in Newville, it's not, there'll be much less than probably 2,000 persons in a cooler fete. And what we also do, sir, may I add, is that there's a file that we have now. So based on what may have occurred in the past, we can pull the file and realize, as Mr. Phillips said, you said 1,000, but it was really 4,000, so you're not going to catch us again. Or a situation for you have an all-inclusive fete, and for the last few years, it has been safe, it's been secure. There may now be a need to reduce the number of police officers. So now there's a file that we can actually measure and know, ascertain how it is the numbers could be.
Ultimately, is it the court or the police that determines the number that is applied to each event, Mr. Dulal Chan?
Sir, an outcome of the investigation, a recommendation will be made. And the event promoter...
Just for the benefit of the public, please explain. An application is made for a dance hall.
Right. An application is made to the court for a dance hall license as well as a special events license.
Yes.
The police officer will, in fact, have to conduct an investigation. And taking a set of variables into account, and as it relates to FET, I mean, one can well imagine, in fact, coming up in Parliament, Commissioner and myself, we were just speaking about some FET that is due to take place. I think it was the wet FET, 7,000 people to go down to the west. You could well imagine. In fact, right now, I think Carnival Friday, we have 29 FETs in the country that need to be policed. We still have event promoters not understanding, not being sensitive to the communities. Not everybody FET, but you have 3 and 4 mega FETs with over 10 and 15,000 people going through, leaving Port of Spain to be heading down to the west. And I was telling Commissioner, I said that, I think last said there was some FET and a FET promoter wanted to use the ferry, and nobody bought into the idea. But coming back to the question, a recommendation will be made to the magistrate. The FED promoter can have an attorney to represent his interests, and at the end of the day, the magistrate, he or she will determine whether or not they are comfortable with the figure. Yes, the recommendation is just a guide, is just a guideline, but we'd have had instances where the magistrate would have cut strength, and in most cases, they sort of agree with the police. But just to give Member Mitchell some level of assurance, I was in a meeting chaired by the Culture Minister on Friday. The officials from Fire was there, Mr. Gypsy, the chairman of NCC, was there, as well as special interests. And she was, in fact, comforted that the person who were representing the FED promoters were, in fact, saying that they would have seen a big difference with respect to the ratio of police officers to patrons. But I think one of the problems we do not have any real place in this country that can accommodate the kind of FETs that we have. That's the problem. And when you look at the dynamics and the logistics and everything, sometimes you really wonder, because if we really go to police, and so we ought to police, we does not even have a place that we can identify as a muster point in the event something pops up in a FET, anything untoward. We have a myriad of problems with respect to parking and what have you. I told her, I said, what if I decide to actually employ 7 wreckers? We will close down all the FETs in the country. And I'm saying this to say it is really, really difficult for police when you see carnival time come around with the kind of problems we have.
We do understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of the initiatives that we've spoken about here today are starting at this point and moving forward into the future with a major end goal of regaining public trust in the TTPS. But one of the reasons that this public trust would have waned would have been due to a number of events, and I call them national events, that would have taken place. And one was the Day of Total Policing. And that report has been outstanding for a number of years now. And I remember when we had the PCA in front of us, again, they were lamenting that they just did not get the kind of cooperation that they wanted. And they had other issues, not dealing with the TTPS, but that was just one that I'm pointing out here now. The other one was the prison break that occurred, and I think there was an investigation into that by the TTPS. What are your intentions in relation to bringing some closure to those reports so that you can get a nice boost in public trust? Because I think the public wants closure on those things. That whole Day of Total Policing, it is alleged, was a breakdown in command at that particular point in time. And therefore, it would go a long way to restore some public trust by the citizenry in TTPS. So what is your intention as the new police commissioner coming in relation to those 2 reports in terms of closing them off?
Yes, so I can deal with the first one, Mr. Philip, and you could deal with the second. But the Day of Total Policing, again, because of the constant dialogue I have with the Police Complaint Authority, with the PCA, we will be actually completing a report, and there are certain recommendations made by the PCA, and those recommendations have been taken into consideration, and they would be implemented. So the PCA has played a very big part towards us being able to put closure to that situation with the Day of Total Policing. I don't want to, I said very soon that we would be making an official statement on it. What I can say, I can take this opportunity on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We wish to apologize for what transpired on that Day of Total Policing. I think the first thing that we need to do is to accept when an error was made. We made an error. This is not a situation of me stating that this was deliberate. again, it is very difficult to ascertain whether this was done, been done deliberately by certain individuals. What I can say is that it should not have happened. I can give the assurance to the country it will not happen again. And why and how I can give the assurance to the country that this will not happen again is because what may have transpired, whether it was deliberate or accidental, this was a situation where there were several roadblocks that actually were conducted simultaneously. And because they did not have proper coordination and communication for a few hours before it got up to the helm, for it to be filtered back down to stop, the country was actually put on hold. You would have seen a similar situation where there was a plan to shut down the country just about a month or so ago when messages came throughout the country. And we immediately had a preemptive strike where we placed strategic officers in strategic locations and with records waiting, and not one person. In fact, on that Monday, there was the least amount of traffic you ever saw of persons coming out of San Fernando to get into Port of Spain because no one wanted to slow down at those spots. In the day of total policing, to ensure it will not happen again, so because we have the operational command center and the commissioner's command center, we have a system now where we are seeing everything in real time. We'll see what is happening. We have communication through the emergency response patrols. May I also add, with the emergency response patrol, 50 of these vehicles will now have dashboard cameras that will be fed in real time. So we are going to have video footage. So say 50 cameras, 50 vehicles with live cams from 9 divisions. You're speaking about 5 of these vehicles at all times, on most occasions, would be fed to so the operational command center will be able to see 5 different parts of that division at all times. So we can see what is happening, as Mr. Dulachan mentioned, through the operational command center and communication. We are picking up everything that is happening in real time, so we can see what is happening. So if at any time there's a situation of more than 2 roadblocks simultaneously that is causing traffic congestion, we are able to ascertain where there's traffic, what is taking place, what is causing it, and how it is we can prevent it. So I can give the assurance that the day of total policing, there will never be a reoccurrence. And on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we do apologize for what transpired.
Just one quick question. The cameras that will be going up on the traffic lights, you're linked into that as well? The operational center, sorry. Or is that something completely separate?
Yeah, that's through the Ministry of Works. But again, to ensure there's a proper feed through the Ministry of Works, we would make the request. So the CCTVs, the body cams of the police officers, the dashboard cameras, everything is going to be fed to the operational command center.
It seems quite clear, once you apply these kinds of technologies, the platform will become easier to manage. Senator Richards.
Thank you, Chairman. That's a great segue. Commissioner, just my own thoughts on the day of total policing. You indicated that the full report is yet to be delivered.
It is now being compiled, and we will bring it forward to the public shortly.
May I suggest we wait until that comes out to find out if there was great coordination or not?
No, but I can admit, so there was not.
Well, maybe there was great coordination.
Oh.
That's what I'm suggesting, right? Just in terms of proper performance management, just to get some clarity, are there specific timelines for the official indoctrination of the use of minimum force policy, the E999, the body cameras and technology, which will add accountability, especially in those lethal engagement situations, the covert operations unit, the domestic violence unit, the cold case unit, and the counter-terrorism unit, just so we have a sense of when these situations will be coming online.
The cold case / missing persons unit, again, through the assistance I have from the United Kingdom, we have to admit and understand when we do need international assistance. They are going to assist us to ensure we have the proper technology, the training, and the capacity, and we may very well need to incorporate and second certain persons external from Trinidad and Tobago to assist us. This is not to give a promise to each and every person that we can solve the case, but we need to bring, sometimes people just need a degree of closure, and also to ensure that there's a unit specifically assigned to, that they can give information if something comes up that they feel that could be of assistance to them in that manner. There will be a change in uniform, implementation of badges also on police officers, so it will assist citizens to be able to pinpoint the officer with their numbers. This will be completed in a few months. The tasers training will begin in February, so hopefully by the end of February into early March, tasers will be provided. The pepper spray will be issued in the first half of February. The dashboard on the vehicles on the last week of February, that will be implemented. With the situation with
how many cars, how many vehicles are expected to be outfitted?
50 out of the 85.
And the body cams?
The body cams, 100 in the first instance, and then we are going to continue.
The timeline of the body cams?
The body cams and the beginning of February. But those are just 100. We intend to put other others to acquire more in the very near future. There was something else, pertaining to the situation with the domestic violence unit. We are going to incorporate it into a domestic abuse unit, whereby it is not just domestic violence reports, but also incest, elder abuse. And the concept of this is this is going to be incorporated with the child protection unit, the witness protection unit, and the victim and witness support unit. But going back to the domestic abuse unit, what we have noticed is that certain persons have been reluctant to actually come to the police station because of fear of sometimes they see themselves as being not the victim. Yes, and because of that, what we intend to do is a similar situation when I spoke about how we do the online reporting. You report online, this unit will come to the individuals. So they will be there, they will come to you, they will get your report rather than you come to the police station. And again, the serious nature of domestic violence, whereas we speak a lot about the number of homicides we have based on gang activity, 38 persons were killed last year based on domestic violence. Through international assistance, we are going to find avenues to try to reduce that as much as possible. The ideal number will be 0. So far, for this year, I do not think we have any homicides based on domestic violence. What it is, we can reduce 38 and bring that down by 80%. I think that is something that we can, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, there's much more that we can and should do, dealing with stressing home the situations of persons who have restraining orders and it is not being implemented. So all of these things will be part and parcel of that unit. That will take place by the middle of this year.
You did indicate recently to the national community that you are determined, it is your intention to bring an end to a number of the outstanding investigations that the public is aware of. This is not a question. I'm just to tell you that the public is hanging on to your word in that regard. Please.
I did say that we intend to close all the gates as quickly as possible, but we must make sure we do not give away accuracy for speed. Having said that, I have contracted an international organization from the United Kingdom to deal specifically with trying to make sure that we can look at a situation and verify whether this requires for us to continue or whether to put some degree of closure one way or the other.
We are obliged, and we are happy, this committee, we are very happy in support of your work to have you know, Commissioner, that very recently as last week, it was reported to this committee based on our interrogation of those issues, that the DNA operation is far better, far more efficient now. The DNA data bank has expanded significantly, and they are now able to make a more significant contribution to your work in terms of solving crime, particularly homicides and sex crimes and that sort of thing. And in addition to that, we would learn last week as well that they have issued a contract to a provider to begin to implement the Electronic Monitoring Act, which will be able to monitor persons who are outside of the prison sufficiently that they will not be a harm or danger to us. So this committee is now sharing that with you, and I'm sure it should encourage you because these are peripheral issues that affect what you are doing. Someone? Mr. Munila?
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you.
And just for the record, because I think we may be live, last week the custodian, I think he's called, of the DNA bank, indicated that while the systems are on the verge of being up and running, he had nothing in his bank yet. They were supposed to transfer from the forensic science entity to the DNA bank. So I think that was the good sign that came there. And they are finalizing the contractual arrangements. The contract, I think, was yet to be finalized for the electronic monitoring. But that appears to be hopeful as well, given where that is. Mr. Commissioner, just a few matters, and probably one of the most critical matters I have here, arising out of several questions, is simply this. We talk about increased amount of cars, we talk about body cameras, we talk about taser, we talk about pepper spray, we talk about the almost the cyber police station that I want to get to just now. Do you have MONEY? Do you have the financing to be delivering on all of these very, very important, critical projects? I see them as critical projects in the build-up towards where you want to go. What is the state of the financing that you will require, and are you getting that type of support? Because you see, the national community will be hearing you today, will take note of all these advancements that we are talking about. The expectations will be high, and then we don't want to be meeting 6 months from today or 12 months from today to be told that, you know, all of these came to little because we had a challenge with finance. And what is the state of financing with this? That's my first question, but I have a couple more.
Yes, sir. But again, we have already started with the launch of the Operational Command Center, the Commissioner's Command Center, the Emergency Response Patrol, the GPS on these vehicles, monitoring them, the approval. And I'm trying to deal with it based on priority, but with all the things that I have discussed, we have the opportunity now to go ahead and drive through with these things, such as the change in the uniform, the tasers, the pepper spray, the badges, the use of the drones. Some things may go on into the next fiscal year, but all of these things that I spoke about will be kicked off, and the dashboard cameras, the body cameras, all of this will take place. May I also add, there are other things also, but again, this has to do more so, it's not so much about funding, but it has to do with management and being able to drive these things forward to make it happen. I am aware, I've seen it for far too long, of the bureaucratic red tape of us always trying to find ways why things cannot take place. Maybe that is why my body crashed a few days ago, but 5 hours of IV fluid and I was good to go to get it done again. The budget that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has, what we have to do is to make it as effective as possible. And I'll give you a quick example, sir. When we have a situation of $33 million per month in overtime, by us looking for and making sure that we can maximize the use of the police officers, make sure it is not abused. For example, we have police officers, they work 48 hours on, 48 hours off. After the first 40 hours, everything after that now is gravy. It's 8 hours in overtime, and the second 48-hour shift, it is overtime. Do we pay officers to sleep? So we need to change that. So the dimension of changing the structure of how they have the roster for police officers, how we deal with the overtime, we cut the overtime by half. You're speaking about the police service now has almost $15 million plus per month that we can utilize in the proper tools, the training, the technology.
Well, but on that note, Chairman, I really do have about 5 or 6 areas to ask. Is there an intention to invite the Commissioner and his team to return to us? But maybe I can just get a headline issue then. Yes, some quick questions that may not require a long answer. Within recent time, Mr. Commissioner, on the Sunday newspaper recently here, 2 days ago, there was an interview with the DPP, the DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions, relating to a matter. A part of that interview had to do with white-collar crime. And clearly we are talking a lot, we talk about, blue-collar crime and so on. But you also made a comment, which I took note of, and I wanted to raise that with you, that you were also in support of the DPP's position of integrating all the units that deal with white-collar crime. And I'm sure that you would agree that in dealing with white-collar crime, or in not dealing with white-collar crime, that also has an impact on, the image of the police and the credibility and integrity of the police service. But you were suggesting, unless I'm wrong, you're suggesting and agreeing with the DPP that the bodies should be integrated into some common unit or department, and you were regretting, if I could use that word, that the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau is currently under the Ministry of the Attorney General, and the DPP went quite far to say that has serious implications for the involvement of politicians and government officials in the investigative process, and he was very sure. I wanted to get your view on this and to what extent you would be pursuing this harmonization of the various units to better coordinate the investigative process to ensure that it is clean, it is not tampered with and corrupted and polluted by government officials or any other person, so that we can really deal with white-collar crime in this country, rather than just have matters reported and for years and years and years, nothing is happening by way of either prosecution or lack of prosecution or lack of action.
Yes, sir, I can be short on this, sir. I think that I certainly know my place, that I will not question the authority of things that presently exist. There are many things that I would like to see change, but I will keep it to myself. I never made a statement that it should be moved from any ministry. What I stated too was that the different units, be it the financial the FIB, the fraud squad, the cybercrime, and the ACIB, we need to make sure that the units work closely together. And by that harmonization, those units working together, it would ensure what you just spoke about, so that there can be no element that can compromise the situation. So the concept of it being, whether it is to be known as the white-collar crime unit or the FID, that division, it is to make sure there's an umbrella where all the 8 different units can work together, have information shared with each other, and to make sure they do not operate as silos. So there's not so much about demanding that it's removed from any ministry, but it's just to ensure that the different units have a better, closer working relationship.
And
thank you very much. In closing, we are approaching the carnival season, and we have seen in the past statistics that reveal that certain plans and implementation of those by the police service have substantially reduced serious crimes during that very heady period. What do you say to us in this regard as we approach this carnival, Fete and Carnival season?
Mr. Chairman, other members, I wish to give you assurance that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will do all that is required. Every single event we will be treating as an operation. This carnival season is not one where we are just preparing for Monday and Tuesday. From day one, from the first carnival fete, the first event that took place, I think it's about it's over 200 in all events in all. Even the weekend before of Carnival, it's about 80 odd events. Every one, we are going to set up certain venue operation centers for Carnival. Monday and Tuesday, there are venue operation centers. We'll have a joint operation center. We intend to do all that is required, especially in the situation that we have now worldwide. We intend to look at each situation, look at the threats, provide the necessary deterrents, and to ensure that we have that apart from reducing crime, sir, and may I add, just not for Carnival, but throughout, we intend not just to reduce crime, but to take away the perception and fear of crime. And the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we intend to protect and serve with pride in such a manner.
Commissioner, on behalf of this Joint Select Committee on National Security of the Parliament, we would like to thank you profusely for your attendance before us today. We would like to say that we consider, I think speaking on behalf of all of us, that your responses to our inquiries were comprehensive, satisfying, persuasive to a large extent. We would like to say that we wish you well. That includes, of course, taking good care of yourself. You did tell us in the course of your submissions that the police officer is unable to protect anyone if he couldn't take care of himself. So we don't want you crashing out, as you just said again. So we join your goodly wife in wishing you good health and that you get yourself some rest, because you are one of the citizens in the country who I think I can safely, on behalf of all of us, say you have found favor with the national community, and we would like you to continue doing the good job that you have begun to do, supported, of course, because it's not just Commissioner Griffith, supported by your deputies, Deputy Commissioner Harold Phillip, who is here today, and we'd like to thank you as well, and of course, Deputy Deodat Dulalchan, and all of your executive and the entire police organization. For my own part, I would like to see the entire police service exert 60% of the energy that you have exerted. If that happens, along with the strategic issues that you have elaborated on today, we will be confident in this country that we will turn the hands of crime back, control it, so the objective of making a happier place and a happier citizenry would be achieved. So we would like to thank you very much for your coming. Thank you very much. And before you go, it may be that, well, you heard a submission from one of my colleagues. We will discuss the possibility of having you with us again, and then we will communicate with you in terms. This meeting is now, this session, this public hearing is now suspended. Thank you very much.